I'm Kristen Denny-Chambers, clarinetist, composer, and founder of Clarinet Playground. This is video number 33 out of 40 going through all of the etudes in Finger Fitness Études Book 2. This one is for Royal Street Cat. Royal Street Cat is dedicated to Doreen Ketchens. She is a staple of the music scene in New Orleans. While Doreen's background is in classical clarinet, she started to play jazz because she fell in love with a tuba player. So Lawrence, her husband, had a jazz band, and all of a sudden she started to learn jazz. She was listening to jazz so she could learn the tunes and fit in with his band. Doreen not only plays the clarinet but also sings several tunes, and you'll hear her going back and forth between the two, so you'll appreciate that Louis Armstrong is her biggest influence. Some people even call her Mrs. Satchmo. If you're ever in New Orleans, you must catch her on Royal Street. She'll play 5 to 9 hours a day with the whole band, including her husband and her daughter on the drums. So with this etude, I was imagining at the very end of a long playing session, strolling home with this nice, confident swagger, and even wailing a little bit here and there, showing Doreen's place in New Orleans. There's so many interesting things to learn about Doreen, so I will include her bio down below, along with a link to an interview that she did with the International Clarinet Association a few years ago. Let's take a look at the music. At the bottom of each page in this book, you'll find 1 or 2 practice tips. For this one, we have study typical jazz articulations in order to apply the appropriate style. Vibrato can be used freely and ad-lib as desired. Listen to Doreen for inspiration. Another reminder as you work on the jazz style of this etude, see Appendix C on page 75 to learn a lot more about some jazz tips and some basic ideas to help you if this is new to you. At the top of the page, you'll find 2 finger drills. These are so critical. Make sure you're practicing these. This is what's folded directly into the music. And from this point forward, as we finish out the book, the finger drills are going to require that you connect registers. I like to start on the upper note, establish the sound, and then go into the drill. It really helps to make sure my wind and my embouchure are all set, and I've got lots of energy in the air. For the style and character of this etude, we have an easy swing with a confident swagger. We are swinging these eighth notes. Notice the 2 eighth notes equals a quarter note and an eighth note under a triplet. This is a typical thing that you will find in jazz music or jazz-inspired music. At the beginning, the notes are a little bit more jumpy, and we have some very specific markings that create a style. And then in the smoothly section, everything's a little bit more connected. I'll play both of those so you can get an idea. For the rhythm in this etude, we'll see lots of eighth notes and triplets with many tied rhythms, plus quarter notes, half notes, and some other long note values. Most importantly, you must swing the eighth notes. We'll get into that a little bit deeper here in a minute if that is new to you. If we look at the beginning, I would count it this way. 1 ba 2 ba, ba 4 la li 1 ba 2 ba, ba 4 la li 1. In measure 35, we have some repeated eighth notes with slurred 2s, along with some accents on some offbeats that tie over. It gets a little complicated on this one. So if we look at 35, we would count it this way. 1 ba 2 ba 3 ba 4 ba 2 ba 3 ba 4 ba. We also have a couple of offbeat entrances, and those can be very tricky. If we look at measure 20, we have the pickups leading into 20. I would count that this way. Ba 4 ba, ba 2 ba 3 ba 4 ba. Right after after that phrase, we have measure 24 with an entrance after the 8th rest. I would count this way. Ba, ba 3, ba 4, ba 1 lolly 2, ba. Now we're going to do some extra rhythm practice, working on swinging the 8th notes. If this is new to you, stick with me. If this is something you can already do, you can skip to the next section. Now we've had one etude already in this book that's jazz influenced, and it was Uptown Cat, and I just barely scratched the surface on that one, I think. So I want to dig a little bit deeper and provide some more tools to get used to this, especially if it's new to you. So I'm going to start with something really, really simple, a C major scale with doubled pitches on 8th notes. I'm going to play them nice and straight, everything articulated. Now, if I look at the second line where it says swing scale, I'm going to actually play it straight, but apply the articulations that you see there. That is a common approach to playing jazz-influenced music or jazz music called slur twos, and you'll find that back in the appendix. So now I'm going to go back to the top line, and I'm going to swing the rhythms. So it's going to feel a little bit like a quarter note and then an 8th note under a triplet. It's not exact science, but that's close. The first note is long, the second note is short. Now I'll pop down to the swing style line, the second line, and apply the articulations in there. So at this point, we've done just about all we can do on paper. This is why listening to jazz is so important, because what I just played sounded very classical, but it sounded like a long note and then a short note under a triplet rhythm in a classical style. So now we need to emphasize the beginning of each slurred note and de-emphasize the second note of each slurred group. So we have a little bit of a little push on the first note of each slur. Now, I will openly admit that I am just scratching the surface here. I'm like 5 or 10% jazz. I say that as sort of a joke sometimes, but there's so much that you can learn further from this. This is just getting a start. So now I'm going to take these ideas and apply it to the phrase beginning in measure 9. Now we'll return to more mechanical aspects of the etude. The opening starts with the drill and requires fast wind and a stable embouchure. Remember that idea of starting on the upper note, and luckily the etude does start on the upper note for you, so you can energize your air and be ready for that. You may notice that this etude is in a very standard A, B, A prime form. So when the A prime returns with the opening material, it's varied, or it has a variation to it, or more decorations, however you want to think of it. But now that we have this extra triplet figure and extra notes, it's a little bit more complicated. Spend a little bit extra time here to make sure you feel really confident with it. Now we'll look at special markings. We have tenuto, staccato, slur twos, accent, housetop accents, and glissando. So at the beginning we have some tenutos. That just helps you understand where the long notes are in the long, short jazz rhythm. And then the staccato, we just want to play those nice and crisp. And if you look at measure 4, leading into measure 4, we have a housetop accent. Those are like short and kind of fat. We want to have some substance with them. And then the regular accent, the sideways accent, has lots of punch to it, and you can decay a little bit on the long held rhythms. Now for the fun part, we're going to talk about glissando. So glissando is achieved mostly with voicing. A very, very small part of it is the fingers. And I think a lot of clarinetists focus a little too much on sliding the fingers and need to focus more on the voicing. What's happening inside the mouth with the tongue position and the airspeed and all of these things. It can take weeks or even months to get a reliable glissando, so be patient with yourself. One thing I will tell you, if this is totally brand new to you, I highly recommend that you watch Laura Campbell's YouTube video called How to Glissando on the Clarinet. It's one of the best videos I've come across that explains this really, really well. So I will put that link down below. Pause this video, watch her video, then come back and we'll do some of these exercises. Okay, now we're looking at this extra glissando practice. I'm going to start with high C down to B. When you see a solid slur, that means play the fingerings of those notes. When you see the dotted slur, we're going to be trying to achieve those pitches by only playing the high C fingering and moving to the second note with just voicing. So I think about going like E, oo, and forward a little bit with my tongue. I'll let the tip of the tongue drop a little bit to help that pitch slide down. You can start this idea with just the barrel and the mouthpiece. Helps you learn how to make a siren and be flexible. And then when we go back to the clarinet, the whole concept is a little bit easier. I'm going to go through that first line showing you how this works. So that line is tough. You'll notice that I had some screechy moments. It's an imperfect thing and it takes some time to get used to it. Some intervals are easier than others. So now as I look at the second line, as we progress down the clarinet, it gets harder and harder to drop the pitch. And if we look at the fourth measure on the second line, I'm going to drop down to that E and hold it as long as I can. Of course, I'm not doing the E fingering. I'm still doing the G fingering. I'm going to sink that down as much as I can, and then I will gliss up simply by changing my voicing and going up. This is my tongue, going back up to a normal tongue position, barely doing anything with my hands. So watch my hands and you can see how honest I am in this description. Now that I'm a little warmed up, those actually ended up being a little easier than the first line. That's the opposite of what normally happens. But anyway, you'll notice on the last measure of that second line, it was a little bit more organic sounding of a glissando. I held the note down a little shorter and I gliss a little bit faster. But I think it's an important process to see how long can you hold that sunken pitch while keeping your airspeed fast and the note not dropping out on you. So when the note drops out on you, you'll basically just get no sound. And that means you dropped too fast, too soon, or maybe your airspeed got too slow. Now we'll take a look at that third line. It's going to get even tougher now. We're building up so that we can play that big glissando in measure 33 because we want the E to high C interval. So same idea as the second line, just a little bit tougher now. Now let's put this into context. Take as much time as you need for the glissando and make sure your wind stays fast. If the tongue drops too low or if the wind slows down, the bottom will drop out on you. Definitely take your time, especially on the glissando. Notice the molto rallentando. The rhythms are there mostly for look. Don't worry about the triplet so much. You're going to take as much time as you want there. So that's a lot of fun once it starts to really work for you. Notice the double star at the bottom of the page. It's a reminder. Very slow, cat screeching glissando with vibrato on the held note. Do that as much as you can. It'll really give it a cool character. Now we'll take a look at the other area where there's a glissando. I consider this one optional. This is in measure 16 leading into 17 because we do have the optional 8VA. So there's two challenges here. Glissando across into the altissimo register can be challenging. It's a whole set of skills that are different than the ones we just worked on. It's the same concept generally speaking, but it's a little bit tougher. So aim for the one in 33, that's the most important one, and this one is optional. So we can choose to do the high B to the high E, or you can do the middle B to that upper clarion E. They both have their challenges. If you have a private teacher, work with them on it a little bit. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them as much as I can with the limited knowledge that I have about jazz music. But there are plenty of people in the clarinet community, and I'm sure there's plenty of other videos online to help you with glissando in all the different ranges of the clarinet. Finally, dynamics are so critical. Watch for dramatic shifts and the molto decrescendo that you'll see in measure 24. So in 31, we have piano, and then the same figure repeated, mezzo forte. And in 24, we have forte going down to piano very quickly. So pace that and get down to a very soft piano. Now for some final thoughts. Royal Street Cat is easy and confident and just oozing with all the swagger that Queen Doreen Ketchens embodies, whether she's playing her clarinet on Royal Street in New Orleans or strolling down the street to head home after a long street session. It needs smoothness, finesse, and a wailing spirit when the time is right. Listen to Doreen to gain inspiration while you expand your ears and musical training with this jazz-influenced etude. Overall, have fun with it. To listen to a beautiful recording of this etude and all other etudes from this book, head over to my website, clarinetplayground.com. Trevor Stewart has recorded all 40 etudes beautifully, and they are available for purchase there on my website. Feel free to join us in the Clarinet Playground group on Facebook where we play and post for each other. And head over to my website at clarinetplayground.com for more fun music and books. Thank you so much. Now we've had one jazz-influenced etude in this book so far. I forgot it again. How is that even possible?